Hi folks, Tom Coy with yet another episode of Arbor Shield. And by the way, this will be my last 3 or 4 months here, and then hopefully I'll hand it off to somebody else. But this one, that is to say this episode, we call it episode segment? Anyhow, you know what I mean, is going to be on a nationwide, turmoil kind of thing with regard to police officers and we'll say use of force, period. Okay? So, having said that, in the studio today, we have Nathan, EMU student. Anything else, Nathan, you want to add to that?
Nope.
You'll go with that label?
Yep.
All right, very good. And we'll go with KJ, which again is my youngest daughter's initials. But anyhow, also from EMU.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the way, what are your majors, real quick?
Oh, I'm a film major, so
makes sense.
Yep.
That you would
yeah, electronic media and film and conservation and sustainability.
Okay. I don't know what that means, but I'm sure you do. All right. So before we get started, why don't you, Nathan, just tell us a little bit where you grew up, your resume, that kind of.
Absolutely. So I grew up in small town Ohio. I born and raised in sort of a nice conservative place. A few suburban areas here and there. I moved around a lot in Ohio. Just throw some names out there like Aurora, Brecksville, Middlefield. And then eventually, around my high school years, moved over to Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is a big change. Very liberal place, and I personally love it. Honestly, what a change and what a dynamic to see such a change in the mood and topics. Went down to Skyline High School, graduate, go Eagles, and I started taking courses in film around that time, and started exploring different topics in like music and film and stuff like that. And currently going to EMU for film, and that's about all you need to know.
Okay, cool. You're up to bat, KJ.
All right, so I grew up in Westland. Went to high school in Dexter, which was a little bit of a culture shock. And then once I graduated from Dexter, I moved to Ypsilanti, and I've been living out in Ypsilanti now for like 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
I'm going to school for film and conservation to help the wildlife, you know what I mean?
Very nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm in my last year of Eastern, so that'll be cool. I'll be walking with my degree after finally figuring out what I want to do.
It only took me 10 to get my undergrad. Of course, I had some other things going on. But
yeah.
Real quick, maybe you guys could touch on what intrigues you about this subject, or what, if anything, draws you to the subject that is law enforcement and use of force. Go ahead.
So there's obviously a lot going on social media right now with police brutality, and then also, like, I don't know, I think that it's interesting because when I was a kid, I wanted to be a police officer. But then I decided that wasn't for me. If you ever have me on your laser tag team, you'll know I'm going to not be the best person to be on anyone's team, because I just end up shooting my teammates,
Okay.
But I think that it's good to have a dialogue, and I think that having that open dialogue strengthens the community bond.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yes. Let me just first say, what a valuable topic to talk about. Because, for one, you go to anybody and they'll feel like they kind of know what a police officer is and what a police officer thinks. And I think that, for me, I'm a big person on freedom of expression and speech. So just the fact that we're having this conversation and talking about how the community feels and how you feel as a police officer is such a big deal. I think it's really
cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
And I think we're going to touch a lot of topics today, and I'm really excited to find out what those are going to be. So
I am glad that you both were able to make it here. I mean, I've had a lot of people, to be honest with you, that said they would show and then they don't show. And we won't get into that. So I appreciate, I don't know if it's courage. I mean, I'm a harmless guy, really, unless, I have to do what I have to do. But, so I appreciate you both being here and the courage that it takes. All right, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to read this definition real quick of use of force, just so that we're all on the same page. And this is as it applies to Michigan. I just kept it brief, because otherwise you'll be here all day. But a police officer can use deadly force when that officer reasonably perceives there is an imminent threat of likely death to the officer or to another citizen. So that's the definition we're working with, okay? All right, so we're going to watch 2 videos back to back, and then we're just going to talk about those 2 videos before we move on. So if we can cut to the videos, we'll be good.
Well, tonight, Roy police are defending an officer who shot a suspect during a scuffle outside of a gas station.
Today, we learned the gun that one officer used was taken from the suspect during that fight. Jeremy Harris is on the story for us. And Jeremy, Roy police say the video doesn't show everything, but it certainly shows a lot.
It does, but Roy Police has hired a Salt Lake City law firm that presented the story to us before we were even allowed to see the video. Now, we'll show it to you this evening, but we want to warn you, portions of it are very graphic. It shows Roy Police in a scuffle with the suspect, Nicholas Sanchez, before one of the officers grabs the gun that Sanchez had and then shoots him with it.
Come over here and talk to me.
The video begins as Roy officers approach Nicholas Sanchez at the door of the gas station.
Really? Or do you just want to be arrested right now? It's your choice.
After a brief verbal exchange,
what did I do, though?
Sanchez lifts up his jacket.
Keep your hands out of your pockets for me.
Oh, sorry. Look, hang on.
No, you got a gun on you. Do not reach for it.
What happens next is quick.
What are you doing, dude?
We'll play out the video from both perspectives.
What are you doing, dude? What are you doing? Watch out! Watch out!
If we slow it down, you see the first officer struggle with Sanchez. They fall to the ground, then the officer comes back up and shoots Sanchez. The gun he is firing is the gun police say Sanchez had.
Shots fired! Shots fired!
The officer drops Sanchez's gun and pulls out his own.
Do not move!
Because he hears the shots being fired, he doesn't know if Sanchez has another weapon on him.
Attorney Heather White represents Roy Police. She defends the officer's shooting, saying the officer who first opened fire claims he saw Sanchez point the gun at his face before he shot. Yet she admits the video may not show that.
It is not very clear, and that's why we feel it's important to have this statement and opportunity to talk with you.
I'm going to talk to you. Come over here and talk to me. Come over and talk to this officer.
Both officers remain on paid administrative leave. The Weber County Attorney's Office is investigating and will determine whether or not one or both of these officers will face charges. Mark and Heidi, we have posted the entire video on our website at KUTV.com.
All right, Jeremy, thank you.
LAPD officers used deadly force on a man who was threatening people with a long metal pipe.
The man was shot and killed, and the whole thing was caught on camera. It happened on Broadway and Olympic this afternoon. A warning, the video may be too graphic for some people. KCAL 9's Greg Mills has reaction from those who saw the officer-involved shooting.
This video is very disturbing. Now, we were told by witnesses moments before he was shot, he was in an argument with a man as they were walking down Broadway toward Olympic. They got to the corner, police arrived, they used a taser on him, and then they shot him. Cell phone video. A man witnesses told us threatened people with a pipe at Olympic and Broadway is shot to death by 2 LAPD officers.
Still coming down from a bit of shock. I mean, I've never seen something like that happen in front of me before.
Nobody could believe what they were seeing. This woman was sketching across the street, and the chaos before the shooting got her attention.
There was this man with a metal rod, and he was threatening everyone.
She and other witnesses told us it appeared the man the officers killed had mental issues. Clara Rios was working in her newly opened barbershop on Broadway when things started to escalate right in front of her shop.
It's just two gentlemen walking down the street, you know, arguing with each other, one antagonizing the other.
She said it was the other guy who was antagonizing the man with a pipe. She said he antagonized him all the way to the corner and then vanished after the shooting. The man who shot this video showed us where the man hit him with a pipe. He has a big bruise now on his forearm. Police did use a stun gun on the man with a pipe, and he was saying something to police, but we couldn't quite make that out. But just before they shoot him, watch, he starts to come toward one of the police officers. This happened early this afternoon, but this police investigation is going to last well into the night. In downtown Los Angeles, Greg Mills, KCAL 9 News.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about the first one. What are your, we'll go to you first, Nathan.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on the first one?
Well, I always find this just, I'm honestly always just amazed at people who you know, the officers have weapons and they're asking for compliance, and he obviously, he's very hesitant about compliance, and he even shows that he has a concealed weapon. So at that point, it is realized that this person is armed and is not coordinating with the police officer. So at that point, he asks to, like, keep your hands away from the bottom of your arms and everything, and they go in for the approach. And he runs away, and then there's of course shooting. And then at that point, it's all about what wasn't seen, whether it was someone like he had his gun and tried to aim it at the officer. But I think what's really important is the fact that they were trying to confront someone that was armed and escaped from the scene with a weapon and resisted arrest. And the issue then comes down to, what's the danger? This person's resisting us and has a weapon and has the possibility to use that weapon, and we cannot control what that person's doing. Right. His hands are away from him. He could just as easily just grab, turn around, and fire. So, whether or not it was to act on that person having the ability to fire the weapon or that person's ability to defy the officer, I mean, obviously, I think violence is not always the answer for those kind of calls, but that does seem like a dangerous time for something like that to happen.
All right. KJ.
It's a little hard for me to say, just because the video is not very clear. He could have been, the individual, he could have been like afraid for his life. And then obviously things escalated and got out of control, and he ran when he probably shouldn't have. But yeah, it's a little hard for me to say.
Okay. All right. So let's stick with, and obviously as a law enforcement officer you hear that a lot, or I should say the news perpetuates that a lot. Maybe the other person was scared, right? Mm-hmm. And I honestly don't remember the nature of the call as to why the officers were called there, but they were obviously called by somebody for that particular person, mm-hmm. Okay? So one thing to keep in mind that, I don't know, to consider perhaps, is that sometimes I'll see comments, though I read very few blogs, to be honest with you. I'll see comments like, well, he was, they were only called there because he was a shoplifter, which is a very innocuous crime, obviously. And my first question is, because you're called to a scene based on suspicious activity, for instance, there isn't, I'm not trying to be sarcastic, well, maybe I am, but because you're dispatched to a suspicious scene, there isn't a script somewhere that says this scene will remain suspicious the whole time and nothing bad is ever going to happen. That's not reality. It's not the way it goes down. So in this situation, the officers respond. They asked him, and I agree with what you said, Nathan, that, and these are all based on studies, but when you see this subject being non-compliant, that is your first indicator as an officer that this may go south. This has some bad potential to it already. For instance, if I were coming out, I'm hoping that if you were coming out of the store and an officer said, hey, can I talk to you a minute? I wouldn't hesitate. I'd just, okay, what's going on? So there's a reason, right? He's hesitating. There's a reason he keeps stalling, which is what he's doing. A lot of times someone will act like they didn't hear you when clearly they did. So he's stalling for time. My guess is he's trying to figure out, how am I going to get out of here with this gun? And I think when he lifts up his shirt, because the officers, what the officer wants to see is, does he have a gun secured in his waistband? And he pulls it up, and then whether he sees the gun or enough of the gun, I don't know, I wasn't there. But obviously enough that he tells his partner, gun. I mean, okay, now your alarms are going off, mm-hmm. Unless you want to go home in a body bag, but the alarms are going off, and then he bolts, okay? And I'm trying to play devil's advocate on both sides here. So somebody would say, well, he's not pointing the gun at the officers. He's not taking any aggressive, stance with the weapon. And my only thing to you would be, okay, you're driving by the scene. Let's say you're driving by the scene with your child in the car, whatever, and this gentleman now carjacks you and takes the vehicle. You don't want to get out of the car, and he ends up shooting you with that same weapon. And I'm just saying, that's what happens in what we do. It escalates from what seems to be a very innocent contact to life and death, and unfortunately, in this instance, he lost his life. So that's the first one. Any other comments on that one? And throw them out there.
Yes.
I'm happy to.
First off, let me just say life is full of unpredictability and possibility. So I understand that going into any situation, you don't know what it's going to be. You can go to a house, you don't know whether the person's armed or how many people are in the house unless you've been given some sort of information. So going in, you're just responding to what you know is the call of action. And then at that point, it's all up to how it goes down. The control goes down between you and the subject in matter. So when it comes down to the danger level or all of that, there's no way you can know. So I can totally see being on heightened alert. And for just two people going to a place and seeing that a gentleman has a gun, you're already on end. So, you know, as officers, you're worried that something can go out of hand not only for yourself, but for the people around you, you know, because even if you end up firing a weapon, there are also pedestrians. There's the issue of, you know, this being recorded and this becoming more of an issue for both sides. So I just want to say that, like, in terms of the entire situation and what the officers probably had to go through, as well as obviously the gentleman who was shot and killed, it was a dangerous game. There was somebody that had a weapon that did not comply with the police and made the situation bad for both sides, because then there's no predictability. There's no way of knowing what this ends off with.
And KJ, by the way, I like your opposite views. That's why you're here. That's why we have. All right. Well, it's unfortunate that my opinion only. I'm still entitled to that. My opinion only is that we're not able to have civil discourse anymore about any number of subjects. You know, two people can't sit across from each other and disagree without somebody, whatever. Anyhow, all right. So what are your parting thoughts? Let me ask you this. If you, let's say you were a police chief someplace or what have you, and you were in charge of a police force, do you think there should be or should not be an issue with citizens failing to comply? For instance, in the first one we saw there, when you see the resistance to that and then he runs, be honest, would you, let's say the gun wasn't there, would you want your officers, let's forget about the gun, but would you want your officers to pursue him and see what's going on, or just let him go?
I mean, I'd probably say that him being pursued would be a better thing if he is resisting so hard and he's like trying to run away.
Okay.
Because that is suspicious. But I feel like it's just so hard for me to like put myself in that mindset, because it's like I feel like making those decisions, like having to be in those situations and making those calls would just be really exhausting and hard.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I don't want to make make it sound like I work in LA or Detroit, and I can only imagine what it's like to work in a big city. But you're right in that as a police officer, you just, and Nathan touched on it, you don't know. You don't know if the car you're going to be dispatched to sitting in one of the parks in Ann Arbor at 2 o'clock in the morning by somebody is going to be just another suspicious call, or if you're going to walk up on this individual and he's going to cut loose with whatever. That's, I mean, and a lot of people would say, oh, come on, that doesn't. All I can say to that is, unfortunately, there's a lot of police officers that are no longer around who thought nothing was going to happen. And it's very easy to become complacent in this line of work and have you cost you your life. Whether you're working in Ann Arbor or Podunk somewhere, there's no guarantees. Anyhow, I don't want to get sidelined. Okay, what about the second video that we saw? What are your thoughts, KJ?
So he got tased.
Yes.
That's what happened. Yeah. Do people usually not go down after being tased? Because it didn't seem like he was going down.
Right. And that, I mean, a lot of times because it's 2 prongs, 2 darts, they may have had some issue with contact. That's one thing. And there are circumstances where, for whatever reason, it may not affect the individual.
Yeah.
So I wasn't there, so I don't know. But
right.
Yeah, it's not like never heard of it. You know what I mean? So, so obviously they tried to deploy the taser, and it was ineffective. So, what do you think? From what you saw, was it reasonable for the officers to take the action they did, or?
Should they have tried to go for a non-lethal blow before they did a lethal blow?
Okay. And what would that look like? I mean, I know what I'm talking about when I say non-lethal, but what are you talking about?
Like a shot in the arm or a shot in the leg, away from the major arteries, something to stop them moving, but not necessarily...
Shoot to wound.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's guaranteed to bring an individual down, or I should say to stop the action toward that might lead to permanent injury or death, right? In other words, it's guaranteed if I shoot you in the leg or the shoulder or whatever that you're going to go down in a heap, and this is all going to be over without my taking your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same thing with the taser we just talked about, is that sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But, you know, if my life's on the line, if your life is on the line and I'm the police officer, I want to stop the imminent threat immediately. So that's the reason, you know, and I see that in blogs and so forth and so on. So that's not an unusual request. I would like to read, because I enjoy the blogs sometimes. So these were all blogs over the homeless individual, and you guys both saw the pipe. I'm guessing what, 3 feet long maybe. But let's stay with this for a moment. And so we have a comment here. He was clearly delusional. I'm assuming the gentleman that was shot. Why doesn't law enforcement use tranquilizer guns on people that are disturbed and out of control? We've already discussed that. If cops can't disarm a man with a pipe without shooting him, I'm not impressed. Cops didn't even shoot the perp in the leg, which we addressed. A couple of prison guards with cell entry gear could have done the job. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to carry a 3 foot long section of pipe, and I want you to take it away from me and disarm me without using any kind of lethal force or any kind of taser. Are you up for it?
No. No, I've tried to do some self-defense stuff with some of my friends who are bigger than me, and if I have nothing and they have something, it's not going well in my favor. I mean, I'm not trained well enough for that.
I always find it, the Monday morning quarterbacking is just amazing to me. But anyhow, you were going to say.
Yes, I think that, going back to call of action, this is somebody that has been shown already to have hurt somebody. Someone got hit in the arm and shows physical injury. So you know, this person is not afraid to use the weapon. He's not just like playing around with it and telling people to like back off and things like that. So this person that obviously is slightly dangerous. The length of the pole is definitely something to keep in mind. I mean, obviously a gun can reach way far, but it's also a precision weapon. So it's something that if a pole were coming down, you can't stop it with a gun. And you don't have any defensive weapons on your side. Like the inmate, the block post, they have shields probably. They have weapons like batons that could even counter that, but with a pistol, it's either lethal or none. And if the taser didn't work, then you know. Although I will say, I did not think that maybe firing a gun was the best case scenario. I think there could have been many ways, maybe just to back up from the perp and contain the situation, like maybe even get back up if the person's getting a little bit more dangerous. But obviously, I wasn't there to see what the officer felt in that moment where he was going to swing, or if it was long enough. So.
Okay, and I'm getting the nasty. Wrap it up, Tom. All right, so real quick, a comment in here. Why am I not shocked? The victim is black. How you get a racist, episode out of what we just saw, I'm not entirely sure. And yet another comment. Yet again, this situation could have been diffused if these cops knew some sort of martial arts outside of using a firearm. Come on, it says he was mental. Why murder him? Interesting use of wordage. So that's a little sampling of holding justice for the police officers there. All right, so we're going to take a look at the last clip here. What I want you to pay attention to is how quick this goes from everything we've been talking about. I mean, we respond to these kind of calls as an instance all day long in Ann Arbor. You know, a suspicious person on my porch, there's somebody that doesn't belong, what have you, and so we'll watch that. Go ahead and cut to the film.
What's going on, sir? What are you doing in the area? There's no snow to be removed right now. I've had a couple people call about you, saying we don't have any snow to be removed because there's no snow in the driveway, no snow on the edge. Wonder what you're doing in the area.
There is snow on the edge. Like over here, there's some snow, like on the sidewalk edges and things like that. So.
What's your name?
No, I don't. I'm not giving you my name.
Why not?
Because I'm just doing my business.
You got a business license?
Sure I do.
What's it under?
I know. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm just doing.
Okay, well, I've had neighbors call saying they saw you looking in cars yesterday. They said you come up today and they said they don't have snow removal. They don't need no snow removal. Knocking on houses.
It's this guy over here. I talked to him over here.
I don't know who it was called. It was an anonymous. They gave your description though.
I talked to him already. I talked to him. He has some snow over there, and I'm mainly looking for in the future when it snows again.
That's not what he said you told him.
Some people don't like to.
He said you told him you're out looking for snow removal and he has no snow to be removed.
Well, there's a little bit on the sides, so yeah.
No, it's warm, it's all that.
All right, well, I'll wait for it to snow again, and then,
okay.
And then I'll be back there.
So what's your name?
I'm not going to give you my name.
Why aren't you giving me your name? You know you're required by law to give me your name when I'm doing an investigation, or you can be arrested for failure to give your information.
I'm doing my business.
You're suspicious in the neighbor. People are calling in on you. I just didn't stop you for no reason. Let me explain something to you.
No, I'm doing my business,
Let me explain something. You need to
I'm
calm
trying to
down.
make a living!
Okay, you need to calm down and quit yelling at me right now.
Go back to your car.
No,
I'm
you need to
doing
calm
my
down.
business!
Bravo 146, send me another unit. You need to calm down right now.
No, you need to calm down. I'm doing my business.
I'm trying to find out what you're doing.
If I'm stealing shit,
I didn't
then
say
you
you were
can get in
stealing
my
anything.
face.
You need to
You
stop
can't get
right
in my
now.
face, man. You
Okay. That one resonates for some reason. Anyhow. All right, let's start with KJ. What are your thoughts? You heard, you heard why who called him, what their concerns are, how fast his behavior escalates. By the way, at the end there, the officer is now flat on his back.
Yeah.
And you saw the shovel there. So, what strikes you, or what do you find surprising about it? Anything?
Well, that was definitely very suspicious. I did think it was really weird that he did not want to comply with giving his name. Definitely seemed like he was trying to hide something. Yeah. Probably was looking through cars and stuff, like what people reported seeing. Yeah, I was surprised by the sudden escalation.
Yeah.
From just being like, no, I'm not going to tell you, to yelling.
Right. And I guess that one of the reasons I picked this clip, and I went through a lot, I always go through a lot of YouTube clips looking for the right thing, because it's everything that we've discussed. That is to say, and Nathan, you said at the outset of the program that, yeah, unless you've been a police officer, you don't know how fast things escalate. And I think sometimes I get the impression from people that, again, there's this script that is followed where deadly force is used, and it starts here, and then the script continues, and then you have plenty of warning and plenty of signs and plenty of whatever so that you don't have to use deadly force. And that's my impression sometimes. But you see how fast it went from checking somebody who's on somebody else's porch. People have been calling on him for a reason, and how fast somebody loses their life over that. And that's why I picked that one. What are your thoughts, Nathan?
Well, first let me say I was very impressed that, and not one time during when I was watching this, he pulled a gun. Because one, he called for backup, which I thought was very smart, because now this person is getting in his face with his finger, and he has an item in his hand that can reach him, is calling for backup and saying, listen, you need to comply. And everything that he said was just mainly verbal. And I'd also like to point out that beyond the fact he wouldn't give him his name, for most of it, he's just saying things that is not information. He's saying, oh, this guy said this. Oh, there's a little bit of snow on the lawn. So he's not saying what his business is. He's saying that there are possible reasons why the person was wrong. So he wasn't informing the officer at all, at least in terms of what his business was truly in the neighborhood.
Sure.
And it seemed like the person that was most informed was the officer. So again, I don't think lethal force would be the one for here. Obviously, there was a point where it escalates and the person starts using his snow shovel to try to fuse his situation with whatever he's dealing with. Also going back kind of the pipe guy, we don't know how this person thinks. We don't know if this person is a dangerous person or is delusional. And from the beginning, you can kind of tell this guy's kind of got a chip on his shoulder and is not willing to comply with the person. So when it came down to it, the issue could not have been easily diffused by one officer. And with the call and with everything that happened afterwards, especially with the shovel and falling down the steps, it did take a dangerous turn, but I even personally wouldn't know how to deal with it. So,
Okay. So my comments, you guys commented on both of them, but obviously it's not his own residence and he's on the porch. They were called on him previously, they were called on him today. You both picked up on the fact that while he's talking to the officer initially, he's stalling. He's trying to figure out how I can talk my way out of this again. The officer's not going to let it go. He wants to know what's going on and has every right to do so. And I think it touches, you know, at one point he says, I'm trying to make a living. Now what's going on behind that, we'll never know. But who knows? You know, maybe he lost his job, you know, and his wife left him. You know, we always say nobody crumbles in a day, and who knows? But all I know is it's very unfortunate that he's in that predicament, whatever that is, in the back of his, in his life, but I'm not going to lose my life over that. You know what I mean? I'm just not. Especially if you're on your, you know, the officer gets knocked down, it wouldn't take much to kill you with a snow shovel at that point. It just wouldn't. So those are there. As usual, running over on time, but I wanted to get to some of your questions. And KJ was nice enough to submit the one. And Nathan, you said you had one, right?
Yes.
Okay, so while you ask me that one, I will look for KJ's in here because I appreciated the way it was written. Go ahead, buddy.
Okay, so I realize a lot of people, like when they think of emergency, they think of calling 911. But I think it's always good to be an enthusiast about the non-emergency number and being able to know that there are some cases where this is something that a non-emergency number could do, or maybe just even a patrol of the neighborhood in comparison. So I would like to know, what is the main difference between, like, the thing that crosses it over from a call that is telling a situation about a non-emergency call and a situation that calls for a 911 call?
So I would tell anybody asking that question, if you want a car or a police officer to respond right now, you need a police officer to respond right now, that is the time to call 911. And on the heels of that, I would say this. A lot of times people think they have to call 911 when a crime is in progress. And I would say, for instance, if you're in a store and things don't look right with, let's say, with this gentleman, puts his hands, says, whatever, the alarm goes off in your head like, man, this is not right. That's the time to call 911. I mean, the worst case scenario is we get there and find out it's an innocent situation and everyone's fine. But quite often, you know, an alert citizen will be on top of something and let us know before the crime even occurs. You know what I mean? So I would say use 911 in that situation. And then, of course, the non-emergency number, if you can wait half hour for a response to have somebody check it, that's when I would call non-emergency number. So those are the two things. But I find, by and large, people are very resistant to call 911 most of the time because they think it has to be a dire emergency right now, and that's not the case. My gut, I tell people, go by your gut. If you feel in jeopardy, if you feel your safety compromised or somebody else's safety compromised, that's the time to call 911 to make the best out of it. All right, here we go. Oh, I don't suppose you remember the verbiage, do you, KJ? Oh, I got it. I found it.
Okay.
All right, here we go. All right, so did you write this? Mm-hmm. Okay. How is the Ann Arbor Police Force responding to the issue that has been highlighted throughout social media involving unwarranted brutality towards minorities? All right. So, as I read the question, I understand what you're saying, by the way. Mm-hmm. And we're good. We're good. But I do want to point out a couple things here. One, the social media thing already puts my little antennas up, because I can't tell you, and I'm sure you guys encounter the same thing. It's like you follow something on social media and they come out with the bizarrest scenarios and consequences, and then you find out through legitimate sources that the social media was way out in left field. So that'd be the first thing. I'd be like, it's like the proverbial, a cop stopped me, I can't believe it, he wrote me for 5 over, and they go on a tirade, and then they tell their friends, and their friends tell their friends, okay? So that I'm just giving you as an instance. What really happened? I'll tell you what really happened. Most officers will stop you for set amount, 15 over, whatever their case is, okay? But most officers that I know of aren't going to write you the full amount. It's very expensive. So they'll reduce it down to 5 over, okay? So legitimately, he writes 30 and a 25, and then somewhere on his notes will write 42 or whatever it is, okay? And so I'm saying that is just one little instance of how something that is not the truth can be misconstrued and spread around until it becomes fact. So that's the first one, all right? Mm-hmm. So you reach social media, and unwarranted brutality. I get what you're saying, but you know what I mean? It's like I'm reading this question, it's like, good grief, they're setting me up already. They're setting me up already. But I understand what you're saying.
Right.
So let me answer. And this always sounds like a cop-out, but it's as honest as I can be. There are bad teachers, there are bad doctors, and we can go on and on and on all day long. Bad cops need to go. Bad cops, if they're doing criminal things, need to be prosecuted. There isn't a cop I know that says otherwise, regardless of what you've heard about, the blue and all that other nonsense. So having said that, the question then becomes, is the perception that police officers nationwide are inordinately executing, instance, minorities and so forth and so on? The numerous studies, I've seen them, and the conclusion isn't there. The conclusions don't prove that, yes, that's a fact. This is going on nationwide. Again, am I dismissing for a fact that there are, I think it was South Carolina, it was horrendous, I couldn't believe it. An African-American driver ran, if I recall, the officer shot him in the back, and of course he was arrested and prosecuted, and to my knowledge is in prison, as he should be. But is that the norm? Is that what goes on from day to day in America? The studies don't show that. The studies don't show that out. So I'm not sure what, and maybe we can end the show because we've got like 2 minutes here. If you were in charge, let's say, yeah, this is good. If I put you in charge of media for your department, in other words, you work for Ann Arbor or whatever, you're in charge of PR for us. How would you address this particular issue with regard to minorities? To say or to demonstrate You know, the Ann Arbor Police Department is not a racist organization by and large. They're not perfect, but they are not racist. And to prove that end, how would you go about doing that?
Doing some sort of community outreach program.
Okay.
Opening up a dialogue.
Okay. Like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Except with people of color.
Yeah. Okay. And that would be good. I like that. That's good. What would you do, my man?
For one, I would like to say that like PR for those kind of things, like I think it is good to recognize what you say, which is that it's almost impossible to really be able to control that entirely, because there's always going to be, and the thing is that like people who are good cops don't get on the news often. I mean, there is good cop work, but that stuff isn't something that the news grabs onto. So it just takes one or two bad apples for something, an image to create. As someone, I'm a fraternity member, and the way that the media portrays fraternity members is, to me, disgraceful. And I personally would feel the way that some people would feel about just having a misjudgment about how an entire organization would be, just because one or two bad apples decide to do something that just is not right. So
Okay.
I think that would be almost impossible, because people like that exist every day. Like I said, life is full of impossible understanding of what kind of reach people like that have. So it could even be a surprise that there could be somebody out there that just still exists and could do something like that any day.
Okay.
So
I appreciate, and I do appreciate you both being here. I especially appreciate our dialogue, because, you know, we're not polar opposites, but I get it. All right, so we're going to close out the show today with a quote, which I rarely do, but in this case, I think it's appropriate, so I'm going to use it. When it comes to the media portrayal of any number of topics, it's not just on this, but the way the headlines come out, the way they have it all, it's so contorted. My goodness. Anyhow, all right, and I'll let you guess who the author was. Here we go. This is a good one. I read it to my lieutenant before I left. I said, "What do you think?" He scrunched up his eyes. He didn't get it. It's okay. Here we go. If it was so, it might be. And if it were so, it would be. But as it is, it ain't. That's logic. Isn't that good? Lewis Carroll. I got one laughing, one squinting.
I'm just,
but
put it all together so I can like understand it. Yeah.
Logic. That's all I'm saying here is, you know, think, logic, rational thought. Don't get carried away. All right, so that will conclude this segment of the show, but from here, they're going to go over to Washington Community, and they're going to use the Milo system there, which is a shooting scenario-based kind of thing. So I appreciate, again, the courage you guys are doing that. And then, when they're done with that, we're going to bring them back. All right, that's it. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in the next show.